into by this community of Adamsville, McNary County, and beyond, of people that were close to both my grandfather and my grandfather, and the stories that they have told. It was my mom's mission to continue to promote his legacy. While doing that, she was taking trips to the Capitol to pick up grants for not only the museum, but also for the city of Adamsville as well. She's speaking engagements all over the U.S., where I can't tell you how many people have told us that they made a special trip out of their way when they were in Tennessee to come to the Buford Pusser Museum, and how my grandfather Buford inspired their careers. I get messages on the daily, both good and nice, of their social media, but I can tell you that they're still going in to become law enforcement officers of my grandfather's legacy. The museum itself is very, and I know, and I have spoken, and the museum is and will be running in the black and not the red for the city. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and let everyone know that there have now been lawsuits filed against the TBI and the DA regarding the handling of this case. I know I'm quiet. I know you don't hear as much from me, and I'm a little bit out of the scenes, but this isn't over yet, and I can only continue to ask that you keep it legacy going strong, not only for the tourism dollars that come to our community that help, for all the many people out there that are still living this story. I will end with that, and I appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madison. Do you want to stay on, or do you want to stay on to hear the rest of the meeting, or do you want me to go ahead and end it, the call?
I'll stay on. I will not be taking any questions.
Okay, all right. I'll set it down. Is there anybody else inside the city limits that wants to speak? Just state your name
My name is Justin Strady. I live literally next door to the museum now that Miss Sally White's house that was between us burning. I was born just after Buford died, but my family lived there at that same address with him way back. I think they moved into that property in 68 or 69. I can't tell you exactly, but the deed would show. My grandfather used to help Buford with vegetables in the backyard. They worked on tractors together. I wouldn't necessarily say they were great friends, but they were great neighbors. And you couldn't ask for a better neighbor. Growing up, playing with trucks in the front yard, I would have cars stop me in the yard because they had driven a long way to see this museum and it was closed. And they just had a few questions, and maybe the 6-year-old kid knew. He lived right here. I don't know why. But I did the best I could to answer them. I still do. I lived there, pretty much my whole life. I don't want anything to happen as far as the museum closing, but I do want to say this. It always hurts. It's a punch in the gut when you find out your heroes may not always have been as heroic as you thought. And I'm not saying, any accusations one way or another, but our whole lives we've heard stories about Buford being capable of being mean. Buford was capable of solving a problem, and force is what it took. That's what he used. That's what made it work. He was willing to fight evil on his terms, not let them hide behind the law, if that's what it took. So we know, and I think he would say himself, he was no perfect saint. And when you elevate someone to a pedestal, their flaws show through just as much as their good. And when I look at my children and I think, what am I going to tell them when they're asking about this museum next door? What I'm going to tell them is there's a man, there's a myth, and there's a legend. Every man lives his life and does the good that he can. Every man suffers evil in his life. Every man's hand will eventually do some sin. It's inevitable. There was only ever one perfect man. The myth we've created is good. It's what we need to hear. The little guy can stand up. Corruption will eventually end, and people will eventually have enough. And our children need to hear that more and more as they look out into this weird world we've created. But the legend, that's out of our hands. That's in Hollywood. That's in books. That's not the person anymore. And we need to embrace all three. The possibilities, the tantalizing things that might have happened or could have happened or some novelists will enjoy playing with, and the down-home goodness that he had. It's what makes us who we are today. It's not fighting. Let's embrace all of it.
Adamsville address. Do you want to say anything? No? Okay. All right.
Art Glasson Gang. I live in city limits of Adamsville. I was kicked out of Selmer and moved over here 55 years ago, and y'all live here, so I'm glad to be anywhere else. I'm late on this, but I'm assuming this meeting is about closing the museum and changing the festival name to law enforcement. I'm sorry to have to ask that.
Well, it's not necessarily that. This was a meeting that the commission, when all of the TBI data came out, they wanted to hear from the public and what their viewpoints were before any decisions were made. So no vote will be taken tonight or any kind of discussion. This is strictly just to hear everybody's opinion so that they can move forward,
I'll be very brief. Buford was a good friend. When I lived in a mobile home, he used to come by and we'd visit and all. He was at our house 2 weeks before he got killed. So, history is history, and when I used to travel more than I do now, but I still get the same. Where are you from? Adamsville. 100% almost. It says, "Oh yeah, home of Buford Pusser." And I think the city's done a good job in keeping the museum open, even when it wasn't profitable. But I'm not for sure we've ever really promoted the museum and the festival to its advantage and for this city. And I'm adamantly opposed to closing the museum or changing the name of the festival. I do recommend that we promote it more. 50 years, we've gone this long. My 2 cents worth is I smell a book and a movie, and I'll leave it at that.
Anybody else from Adamsville? I'll hear it. Yep.
I probably know Buford longer than anybody here, I guess. We went to school together. We get out of school and we go to our jobs. I worked at the Vincent drugstore. He worked across the street at Deer grocery store. I made him a cherry coke every time he got home. After we'd get off work, we'd have to get together and go somewhere. Savannah, usually. But we run together, we drove together, and we grew up together. And when he was elected sheriff, he made me an honorary deputy. I didn't want to be a deputy. I wasn't no sheriff for him. But he done that. And my wife done a lot of secretary work, even when he was sheriff. But what happened to Buford? I know Buford was brave and he had done it, but Buford was not brave enough to shoot his face off. So that when his mother calls, Buford had been hurt, and I go over there and look. Same way when he died. She called me and said, Buford's been killed in a car accident. I go to the hospital and he's still in the ambulance. And she pulls his blanket over and showed me his face. But me and Buford was together the week before. We was at Memphis, and me and him and Fred Pantos, then the coach of the University of Memphis football team, had a last picture made of him, I think. But we were at that Fred Panco's home, and we go, and there's a guy from the old Memphis Press Center wrote an article about Buford. Good evening article. I think they got it, made it to city. I had it. But he wrote an article about Buford. But one thing about Buford was leaving his house, so we stopped at a station. We wanted to go to the bathroom. And we got out, and he had some tape, and he taped his doors in his hood. I said, Buford, what is it? You've been getting, he said, well, got a lot of threats here lately. And that was the week before he died. I mean, back before he happened, you know. But anyway, I come home and I left him in Memphis to sign for him to play himself in the movie. And I come on home. And then he come home the next day, and then he was killed that afternoon. So Helen called me, told me he had, and I go back over there. And she was showing him to me. And bless her heart, she called me every day for months after he died, and it brought me stuff and pictures and everything about it. But I think that Buford was, he done a lot of things that we shouldn't have, and he's done a lot of things that he shouldn't have, but I don't think he shot himself the way he did. He wasn't that brave. So that's all I'll give a few comments about our times together, and I knew him pretty good, and he knew me pretty good. We run together for months, years. Hey, one thing I want to add to that, keep the museum open.
Did y'all hear that? Anybody else from Adamsville?
Hi, my name is Vic Benson. I moved down here from Connecticut about 3 years ago, so I didn't know, obviously, I didn't know Sheriff Pusser. First I ever heard of him was when I watched the movie in the movie theater. The movie came out in 1972, and that's about it. But I've been interested in this whole thing. You know, I read the newspaper article. I didn't read the 1100 page report. But my feeling is, well, the reason I'm even in Tennessee is because I wanted to move down to a place where people had the same values that I have, and that is not in Connecticut. The people down here that believe in Jesus Christ, that believe in guns, that believe in the Constitution. And that's what I feel. That's who I am. So that's me. But I know there's evidence that they dug up, and literally, and I'm sure they went through old photographs and whatnot and came to the conclusion that he did murder his wife. And maybe he did. We'll never know. But I believe that in America, a man is innocent until proven guilty. And we will never have a trial. We may have been able to get an indictment at the time. My view is that the sheriff's department or the district attorney had a chance to prosecute him if they felt that that was appropriate at the time. But I believe 56 years later, it's not the time. And as far as I'm concerned, if he's innocent until proven guilty. And that doesn't mean, well, he's not guilty until proven guilty. It doesn't mean someone's absolutely innocent or that didn't do it. It does mean that in a court of law, they could not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And all we had to do is think about the O.J. Simpson trial back in 1995. There's another case where I think most certainly he wasn't guilty of what he was accused of. But he had a pretty good lawyer team, and He was exonerated. He was found not guilty. And I don't think we should find Buford Pusser guilty after the fact, 56 years later without a trial. That's just the way I feel about it. Thank you.
Anybody else tonight, too?
How are y'all this evening? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm a good speech giver here. I'm a deputy from North Alabama, about nearly 3 hours from here. So I don't really have a dog in the fight with anybody that grew up with him. But I did grow up with the stories in my area. My grandparents who raised me, they had family from the area that knew him. So it became a big part of me and made me become law enforcement. But I'm sure a lot of law enforcement had started, which I know they had. The main thing I want to say, y'all pretty much hit the same points I would say. But the one thing, getting rid of the museum is letting this new day and age of the internet win. Because all that's going to happen, is all the naysayers, the ones that's out there to get clout, that's going to say, oh, we don't like law enforcement. They said he did this. He's guilty. We're going to spread the rumor out, and everybody that's, gullible, like a lot of we've seen here, is going to believe it. And that's all the legacy's going to be. So if you close down the museum, you stop this, and you stop anything about him, that's the only legacy you're going to see because of the footprint on the internet. And right now, you used to search Buford Pusser, you had all the stuff that was great and everything. What's the first several pages you see now? Right. It's terrible. And like I said, I got into this and stuff because of him. And he wanted to stop corruption, and they didn't like that because he couldn't be bought out. So what happens if you have something protected and all of a sudden you decide, let's remove that security guard? That crime's going to come right back. And that crime is still here today. And that corruption is still here today. And it climbs the ladder. And it's still there. And I believe the same thing that y'all said. It's all about money. It's about books, movies. And, was they given, there was a rumor they were giving government funding to close cold cases. Which one would be an easy one? A man that can't defend himself? But I think they underestimated his supporters. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to keep it alive. We're going to stop this. And hopefully one day, I don't know if they'll ever redact their, statements, but we can go back and we can hopefully change this footprint and get it back and get history back the way it should be. Thank you.
I think there might be a few more. Anybody, Wes, I think you had signed up. Mr. Lucky?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You signed in, didn't you?
I did on accident.
Okay.
I thought it was the admission roster.
Most y'all know me lucky to it. I don't guess I know like to tell y'all, I ain't already said on the TV today, but youth was 59 men, people still up here now. Most of y'all don't know my son in firearms in 71 that got him out of the house. And I don't know if he did it or not, but he told me he was in back in the bedroom if he had to have it. And I don't think that he could change nothing. But there's more murders within walking distance. This right here, TBI didn't do anything about it. And they told his brother-in-law, which my nephew, I said, he'd been a little better off something. We're sure that guy did. His girlfriend's son, they said the TBI didn't go in and spend all the money like that on nobody. You should have spent as much on somebody like that that should have spent on you 58 years ago. And he was the best I was seeing with older people, by helping them, and poor younger people. You couldn't beat. And I don't think he did this. And I don't think that he changed the museum. That's all right.
I'm King Newell. I wasn't under sheriff's or Buford's whenever he was sheriff, but I grew up 2 houses from him. I I graduated with Dewana, with friends with Dewana. I can remember Buford playing ball with us in the yard and running around, and I've heard a lot of stories all my life about Buford. How he, used to chase the teenagers through town, and that's how he kind of patrolled. And I've heard that from several different people. He patrolled because he played cat and mouse with the teenagers, because it was a game. But I've always heard that Buford was tough. Buford liked to fight, didn't care to fight. A lot of times he'd start it, but he'd finish it. That was him. But as far as him killing Pauline and starting the ambush, I don't believe it. Never got it. So in my opinion, I think we need to keep the museum and keep it fair. Because this is our town.
Right.
Anywhere I go, I tell everybody, keep it fair. Excuse me.
Hi, my name is Bridget. My grandparents are from here, but I was born in New York and lived there for a long time until I was a senior in high school. But my whole life I always heard about Buford. I've lived overseas, I've traveled all 50 states, everywhere I go. If you tell them, if you say where you're from, it's Adamsville, Tennessee, they say, oh, Buford Pusser. Even in Japan, when I lived there. Whatever this paperwork says, you should keep the museum open because it is the city and the county's way of getting the story right, the way you want it told. It's the city story, like he said. It doesn't matter what they say in the paperwork, but it brings revenue into the city. People come from all over, and you may now even get more people coming. So, people who are just curious. And then if they come, people at the museum, if it's open, you can set them straight. But if it's not, who's to tell you for side? So that's just my thing.
Hey, my name's Jeff Droke, and my parents are mom's from Adamsville. She they had a cotton farm right across from the old hospital, the new hospital. And then my dad's from the big metropolis of Lakewood, which is a pretty exciting place. I would spend most of my weekends out here in summertime. My grandma's out there across from school. My uncle, Ward Moore, I don't know if you know Ward Moore, she was a sergeant from Highway Patrol. He was good friends with Buford. And Buford would look after my grandmother. He would come down the little quarter mile or eighth mile road she had, the little gravel road out here at 2 in the morning. He watched after her because she was a good widow woman. It took me a while to understand what actually widow was, but he was a widow woman. And my dad, I don't know if any of y'all remember Pony Tacker, that was the registered deeds and the courthouse in Selma for probably 40 years. We'd go visit him on Fridays, and then we'd go visit upstairs and go visit Sheriff and Miss Pauline and told, her incident. And I was a kid, but I was a kid that listened. And they had a big effect on me. Yeah, Buford was rough, my Uncle Warren was rough. They had to be. It was a rough place. But, so I called, the last probably 15 years, I worked as an advisor in Shelby County in Memphis. So, working with crime and drug interdiction, and which, Uncle Warren and Pusser have been a big influence on that. So I worked a lot with Amy Wyrick, who worked with Davidson, General Davidson, who's the one that brought this, crazy case up. Well, I called Davidson, and talked to him about this a couple of weeks ago. And I was amicable with him. I didn't argue with him, and I just told him my story. I said, I was around a lot of this as a kid. So I was a kid that listened. I made me look like I was playing with Hot Wheels cars, but I was listening. And I told him, I said, you know, do you have a murder weapon? Well, according to this crazy guy in Northwest Arkansas who says he's got a murder weapon, he says, no, I don't have a weapon. And I said, do you have a crime scene? And he's like, well, I think maybe the house. I said, so the three kids that were asleep in the house, were they in comas or what? They didn't hear anything? And we went on, and I said, and I read a little bit of this, you know, what people put out there on the internet of this 1,100-page document. And I said, what's your motive? And he's like, well, you know, they had a fight early that morning. And I said, but I've read that, and hopefully the person's not in here, but somebody told TBI that their aunt and their mama had seen Buford and Pauline arguing, and they were at a beer joint in the parking lot at 2:30 in the morning. And I'm not going to judge any, well, I guess I've been ready to, but a mama and an aunt at 2:30 in the morning in a beer joint in the parking lot, probably, they're not out there reading the Bible. They're probably drunk. And I mean, if just saying, if it's drunk at 2:30 in the morning, you don't know who you're seeing. So, we debated a little bit and left it on friendly terms. I talked to Amy Wyrick, who's working out of Somerville, but she's part of the 25th Judicial District, and I've worked with her quite a bit. And we talked, and I stayed on an even keel, and she didn't. And I asked her, I said, you know, I just want to ask you, do you know who Louise Hathcock is? And she's like, no, I've never heard of her. I said, y'all in the TBI has pulled some information from her nephew. And I told her about, Buford killed her in 66. Because she wasn't a good, he didn't kill her because she wasn't a good person. She wasn't, you know, down there passing out, you know, cotton candy to children and reading to the elderly. She was a bad person. And I said, this Dennis Hathcock guy has got a revenge motive, so that taints all your evidence. And then she was brought up about, well, it didn't make any sense why he was down on New Hope Road. I said, well, he was down there because he got a call to be down there to go to some crazy beer joint because the people are going to kill him, call him down there. Well, she said, well, how do you know that? I said, my aunt, he probably killed me for saying that, but my uncle Warren Moore, I listened. I mean, the adults in Pusser sometimes would be at my grandmother's at the dinner table or breakfast table talking. Well, they thought I was playing. I was, but I was also listening. And I knew there was a call down there. I mean, we got the call when he got shot from, I guess it was from Al Capone, to tell us, you know, Rufus Craven was a plastic surgeon in Memphis. And we got a call from my dad, you know, Uncle Pony dad worked at Shrine, and, you know, Craven was a big Shriner. Go find Rufus Craven. He's got to reattach Pusser's jaw. Well, so the way I ended with Amy, who I had a long working relationship in Shelby County, and she was saying, Jeff, I am tired of talking to you, which I hear that from a lot of people. My wife says it. So, and I told her, I said, just tell me that you think that that Buford actually shot himself. And according to, I think it's what we got from Dr. Craven, 3 times. You think he shot himself 3 times? No. And then she hung up on me. Goodbye, Jeff. So anyway, that's when we'll close that. But yeah, I told her, she said, Jeff, if you've got a forum and you want us to change something, then you put on your own investigation and you do your own press conference. And I said, well, you can count on it. So anyway, sorry. Jim.
wants to go last.
Oh, okay. Let me get.
Hello, everybody. I'm Debbie Moffitt. I'm Jim Moffitt's daughter. He's one of the Buford deputies. And all the time, been around my dad. I never heard my dad say a bad word about Buford Pusser. I've had a niece that's called me several nights in the last 2 weeks. She couldn't sleep. The things have been said about her dad, about my brother, about my dad. And I've lived here in Adamsville all my life. Or what time wasn't in Stantonville. I never saw anything bad in Buford Pusser. He was always the kindest person when anybody was around here. He helped this town during the bicentennial. He'd come up here on Main Street when we were celebrating Adamsville then, and then he was out here, I think in 1973, when money was being raised for this park out here. He used to be a saddle club out here, and that's all there was. There was nothing for girls to play in. And look at what the park has got to right now. It's a big accomplishment, I think, is, you just look at all the kids. I've been in the Parks and Rec program up here, and there's 300 more kids that sign up every year in sports here, and they're playing on the Buford Pusser Park. He is one of us. He's part of our town. He's part of our legacy. I'm from the old school. I've not been on Facebook. I've not read a lot of things that my niece has told me has been said about my family and about Buford's family. But I think that everything should stay as it is. His name should be on the welcome signs. His walking tall should be on the tower at the park. He's just a part of us, and we're all Adamsville.
That's right.
I'm Steve Sweat, and Sherry, my wife here, she tells me a lot of times you don't have to tell everything you know. But I was raised in a moonshining, bootlegging, alcoholic home. And the first steel that Buford busted up was just about 1.5 miles down the road here. And the smoke from that steel would roll every morning. They fired it with car tires, the black smoke would just roll. And it was like slapping Buford in the face. And it was Monday morning, December 16th of '63, Chief of Police Buford Pusser busted his first moonshine steel. And it was a big 3 1,200-gallon cookers right here in the edge of Adamsville city limits. And it belonged to my brother. And they never had any hard feelings. Now, the funny thing about it, people would ask me if Buford stopped my brother making moonshine. I said, no, he just moved to Hardin County. So that went on for years. But none of them ever had any hard feelings toward Buford. And I am recognized by the state, by the House and the Senate, as the Sheriff Pusser historian. And myself, I witnessed all this stuff and raised in a home as rough as I had it. And I chose to support law enforcement. And I'm not going to try to bash the TBI or this investigation. But it appears to me, and I put an ad in the paper the other day, a statement. And Drew, you corrected it. It looked good. In my statement, it said, in the opening part, I am saddened by the opinion of the investigation. Now, someone at the paper might be an honest mistake, but I felt like the main word in that statement was changed. It was saddened by the outcome. I talked to Drew, and if any of you read the paper this week, you see that statement straightened out. I'm not bashing the TBI in this investigation. But as far as I'm concerned, it appears that it's an opinion. There is no evidence that I can see that they could convict Buford Pusser for this. And I think it's terribly sad that they did this to a man who couldn't defend himself.
Amen.
It's not a hero. Let me tell you one thing about Buford Pusser. I've seen it as a kid growing up here. Nobody came into Adamsville and told us what to do here. Buford Pusser handled that. He stood up for Adamsville.
Amen.
And all of you tonight have done for him. I think the museum needs to go stronger and bigger than ever.
Amen.
Push it.
Anybody else?
In closing, I'd just like to say, over the past few months, I've talked to many of them, people I respect, think a lot of. And what we see here tonight is why I love Adamsville.
That's right.
We can come together, agree to disagree, or agree to agree. And we can leave here and go eat lunch together. But over the past few months, there's no telling how many emails, letters, calls. I had one lady call me from Pennsylvania. She said, we go to the beach 2 times a year. We make a special trip through Adamsville just to go to the museum. They've done it for 5 or 6 years. So, you know, you can believe what you want to. You can read the report, make up your own mind. And I think that's what makes this great. But I appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate what you said. And we'll be getting back with it.
And we do have the report. If anybody wants to come by City Hall, you're welcome to go through ours. We've got them back here, but we'll take them to City Hall and you can come by and look at them if you want to. They'll be there. Thank y'all.